Hi, Helena.
Hi, Adam.
And hi to all of our listeners. We like to start every episode by introducing ourselves, and so I'll hand it over to Helena.
My name is Helena Dix. I am an Aussie opera singer who's been camping out in Britain for the last 22 years. I love to sing high notes all around the globe. It's a favourite part of my job. But when I'm not singing high notes around the world, I'm a foodie, I'm a dog lover, and I love to laugh.
And my name is Adam Miller. I'm a former opera singer turned producer, writer and director. And Helena, you and I have worked together in many different capacities over the years, and we've had a lot of fun along the way. On today's episode, we have the wonderful and inspiring Sharon Kempton. Sharon is an accomplished Australian opera singer and performance coach. She's performed more than 40 major operatic roles worldwide and currently resides in Germany. In addition to her singing career, Sharon is a certified mindset and performance coach, helping professionals enhance their communication skills and confidence. As we pick up the conversation, we're discussing Sharon's life in Germany and some of the challenges that some of us may have surrounding foreign languages. If that sounds interesting to you, then listen on.
And sometimes German was a real chore.
Adam, you're really strong in French, aren't you?
I'm really strong in French in the same way that Kermit the Frog is really strong at flying aeroplanes.
Okay, so this is an insider joke, obviously.
Well, when Adam and I and Henry Chu were on an opera course in Sydney together when we were kids, Adam got given this piece of music to learn. What was it?
Wasn't it Thais' duet?
Thais. And we were all given music, and Adam's like banging on the desk trying to like learn this French, but it just sounded so hilarious. I was like, Adam, is that French?
It was distinctly un-French. And I have to say, that was just the beginning of my French career nightmares. I did a tour with Scottish Opera. It was a concert tour. I don't know, it went for about 20, 30 shows all around the Highlands and Islands. And before every single show, the musical director would say, okay, shall we just run through that French again for you? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. And every night I'd go out and butcher the French language in front of countless people.
You were like Joey in Friends.
Absolutely. I have to say there is a review out there of me that is, I'm trying to remember the exact wording, but I'm pretty sure it was something along the lines of, Adam Miller's French was alarmingly inaccurate.
Alarmingly.
I wear that as a badge of honor. And I say that as someone whose mother is a Francophile and absolutely loves France and absolutely despairs of me singing in French. So I try to avoid it whenever I can.
Aww.
That is a memory that will live with a long time with me.
But Sharon, so if we're speaking about language, you're obviously an Australian living in Germany now.
Mm-hmm.
What took you over there?
I had always seen Germany as a place that was filled with so many more performing opportunities.
Mm.
If you compared to Australia, there are at least 80 active theatres in this country.
Wow.
Now, Germany as a country fits into the state of New South Wales 2.5 times. So that gives you a visual about how small this country is. And there's a population of 85 million people in that small space. And most major cities have their own opera house with a full-time ensemble, full-time chorus, full-time orchestra, often ballet, Schauspiel, straight theatre. So it's like Sydney on steroids. You know, I like to say to people, so I grew up in the beautiful outer eastern suburb of Croydon, and people who know the eastern suburbs, I say, so imagine there's an opera house in Croydon, there's one in Box Hill, there's one in Ringwood North, there's one in Altona, there's one in Frankston, there's one, and I just try and give people an idea of how many theatres there are and therefore how many opportunities exist for singers here.
Sure.
So I'd always seen that would be a place that I would love to go. I was always someone who wanted to try new things and be a little bit adventurous, even in being fairly conservative. That's sort of what I wanted. So I was living in Sydney at the time, and I was also a bit nerdy and super ambitious, and every time and any time a guest performer came to the opera house and while I was singing in the chorus, I would ask them for a lesson. I would grill them about what it is to be an international opera singer. I would do everything I could to get under their noses and learn from them. And I can also remember the first day that I arrived at the Surrey Hills Opera Centre I went straight to Stuart Maunder's office, and he was the casting director at the time. So we're talking 2001. And I knocked on Stuart's door and he said, "Oh, welcome, Sharon. I hear you've joined the chorus." Yes. And I said, "Stuart, I'm so excited to be here. I am so grateful, but I would love you to consider me for small roles and understudies." And he said, "Right on.
Oh, great.
No worries." And the next day, I had in my pigeonhole a letter offering for me to cover the page in Rigoletto, 4 bars.
But they are the best 4 bars, to be fair.
Yeah, I know. I accepted graciously. But you know what the funny thing was, and this is the thing I'm coaching now for singers everywhere, is a lot of the ladies in the chorus, they were a bit put out. "Oh, she's been here 5 minutes and she already gets an understudy."
Of course.
And I overheard them and I said, "I kind of get it, but have you asked?"
Sure.
And they're like, "What?" I said, "You can't just sit there and expect people to know what you're thinking and what you're wanting unless you tell them."
Sure.
And I said, I wasn't arrogant. I wasn't rude. I just said, "This is me. I'm here and this is what I would love." And it was given to me. So one of my greatest mottos, I use it with my kids all the time, is please ask me for anything. Ask, or the answer's always going to be no.
Uh-huh.
So when it comes to singers saying, "Oh, there are no auditions," I say, "But that's BS. Of course there are auditions. You have to ask for them. You have to get off your butt
Absolutely.
and create your career. It is not going to fall in your lap."
I say that to singers quite frequently when it comes to things like managers and agents and things. And they'll be like, "Oh, my agent's not done this." And I said, "Okay, I appreciate that you are the client of your agent, but quite frankly, you can still do the work too. And yes, if you just sit back and go, 'Oh, it's not my job,' well, then that's going to be the shape of your career."
Exactly. And I would actually say that it is 100% your responsibility. It's the first thing I ask too. When singers come into my program or they come for a coaching and they say, "Oh, my agent's crap." And I say, "And how often are you in touch with your agent?" And they'll just look at me like, "What do you mean?" I say, "You need to be in contact with them at least once a week. You need to be putting your face under their nose regularly, because life is busy and they may have 15 other mezzos on their books. And it's the people who keep showing up and saying, 'Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want. What have you done for me this week? What can I do that's going to help us get me this gig?' You have to be 100% responsible for it."
And it's at this point that my manager is listening in and going, "Oh, if only Helena just contacted me once a week, that would be so nice." because it's like with me, it's almost every other day. And then one time my manager forgot to write back to me on something that I'd written to him. And the next day I got in touch with him and I was like, "Hello, my name is Helena Dix and I am your soprano client. It's been 24 hours since you've got back." He's like, could you just give me a day to answer you, Helena?" I said, "You could have told me that. You could have said, 'Helena, give me a day to answer that.'" And ever since then, we've gotten along like a house on fire. But at first he was just like, who is this woman and why, what is going on here? I'm like, "Have you done this? By the way, do you remember this? Blah, blah, blah." Yeah. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
I'm saying minimum once a week. This is,
Yeah. I love
but
that.
some of these people don't speak to their agents for 2 and 3 weeks.
I love that you were confident enough to go and knock on Stuart Maunder's office and do that. That's so great. And you're right. It's confidence, but also it's creating your opportunities, and that's wonderful. What a great kind of stepping stone. So what happened after that? So you were there and you got to do things like that, and how did that eventually progress to the journey?
So this is where the story took a sort of a twist and a turn. I was feeling very confident about where I was. I was having some lessons with a couple of teachers in Sydney and trying to decide which one I was going to work with. I was entering competitions. I remember being in the final of the Covent Garden, I think it was the competition, and the wonderful Jessica Pratt won. And she's gone on to do just thrilling and amazing things.
Yeah.
So what happened was I thought I was ready to take it to the big guns and asked for an audition to be a soloist. Because in all honesty, just taking a couple of steps back, before I took the contract to work with Opera Australia in the chorus, I was waiting to find out if I'd been accepted as a young artist in Queensland. So it was between me and another soprano. So I was holding off answering because if they were going to offer me the young artist, I was going to take that.
Mhm.
As fate would have it, I wasn't given that. So I took the chorus contract with my goal in mind being this is the stepping stone to my solo career. So it was never my intention to sit in the chorus and get comfy and stay there. And mind you, I'm not saying comfy. You work very hard in the chorus. And at the time that I was there, I absolutely loved it. So I asked for a sing, and to cut a long story short, I was basically told that as far as that person was concerned, I wasn't soloist quality, and I would never, as long as they were in charge, never ever be a soloist.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a blow to the ego and to the self-esteem, and I think I probably cried for a couple of days. And then I also remember my well-meaning agent at the time, who I fired after this, said to me, "Well, Sharon, I've got a couple of other sopranos on my books, and they're very beautiful, and I think you need a makeover."
Oh,
Oh my God.
Nothing like rubbing salt into the wound. I'm
wow.
sure that he meant his intentions were good, but that just fed into my insecurities at the time, that I wasn't the right package. I didn't look right. There was something the matter with me. So I thought, okay, I'm getting a signal that the people that have the key to the playground currently at Opera Australia aren't going to let me play. So let me send my focus back to this idea that going to Germany would be a fantastic thing. So I entered the German Operatic Award, and I did something which I now coach because I know infinitely, and I know the science behind it. I started seeing myself as the winner. I practiced with the idea that I was already the winner. I looked at maps of Cologne, of where I'd like to live. I started imagining, seeing myself through my own eyes in the competition, singing beautifully with poise and with, just in the zone, and the judges sitting there looking at me smiling. It was all this movie that I played over and over and over again. I had affirmations all over my wall. I'd gone to Officeworks and bought fluorescent paper and then printed out, "I'm an international opera singer. I live in Germany," all over my wall, like wallpaper. People would come into my room and go, "Yeah, that's interesting." So yeah, I went into that competition with an absolute edge, and you guys won't believe this, but just so happened that for some reason, the powers that be that had auditioned singers from all over Australia to get to the finals had only chosen 3. Now, we both know usually the number 6, right?
Yeah.
So it just so happened they'd picked only 2 other singers. So already the odds were better.
Yes.
So when I got there to the final, and it's a grueling whole weekend of interviews, and you have to work with a director, and I can remember singing my aria, and she asked me to sing it as though I'm walking on a catwalk, and I know there were all sorts of things happening that I had to do. And then there was the final concert at the end, and literally it was like, and now I understand the science behind it. I had played this movie so often that my brain and body were so used to it, there was no fear. So I sang beautifully, I sang confidently, and the people in the audience were smiling at me. I felt like it was a deja vu moment. And then when they announced me as the winner, I literally, my whole body was, that goosebump sort of moment. And I just literally said to myself, this really works. But I had to stop self-sabotaging. I had to believe it was possible. And I had to imagine that I'd already won it so that I could just go in there and do what I needed to do, sing beautifully and be present.
And so where did that come from for you? Is this advice you'd been given, or is this something that you created for yourself in terms of an ethos and a way of thinking and a way of working?
There were 2 things. I'd started already at that stage reading self-improvement books and ideas about growing and being better, because I had come from a very negative family, a very dysfunctional family. I knew that there had to be something better. So I'd already started a personal development journey, you might say. And then I'd also had, through my university lecturer, because I'd studied music therapy and music performance, I had done some guided imagery in music. So I understood the power of creating an image and going with it. And so I would do that while I'd had my arias playing, or even while I was singing. So I understood that amazing power of how, even at a cellular level, creating new synapses and dendrites and all those sorts of things is enhanced if you add music.
Right.
So for me, actually singing and then visualizing, and it just cemented all of that for me and allowed me to go into that competition with, it was like an edge. And it wasn't an arrogance. It was just I'm meant to be here. This is my prize. because I'm going to Germany. So that was the next thing too. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be able to sing and perform as a soloist.
Wow. And so obviously you won that award and that took you to Germany. And is that it? So is that the point you landed in Germany and just went straight to fame and fortune?
So I ended up in the opera studio. There are 8 singers. Every year they have 8 singers and they're from 8 different Fachs.
And this is in Cologne, is that right?
Yeah, in Cologne. And halfway through the year, they already said, we're so pleased with you. We love what you do here and we want to offer you a second year in the opera studio. And it was what we call a mündliche Vertrag. So they hadn't gotten around to writing anything. And then Opera Foundation, bless them, sent another lyric soprano as the next prize winner, which kind of pushed me out. And they were so apologetic. They said, we're so, so sorry. We actually have to take back our offer for you to stay here because we have another lyric soprano coming from Australia. So there was kind of panic stations there for a bit. I was like, oh my God, I really want to stay here. It'd be stupid just to pack up and go home because that's not what I want.
Yeah.
So I started auditioning like a crazy woman. And in the opera studio, you work really, really hard. And nearly every day you're performing in the Kinderoper. So you're performing for small children in another small tent that's set up in the foyer of the opera house. And if you're not doing that, you're in rehearsals for a main stage production. So there was no time for me to escape, and go and audition.
Wow.
But I managed it. I think the worst audition I did, guys, was I took an overnight train from Cologne to Görlitz. They were looking for a lyric soprano, and I didn't sleep a wink. And then I got up and tried to sing, and it just didn't work. But I was auditioning everywhere. And then I auditioned. This is a fabulous story. I was auditioning in Freiburg. Sharon Kempton, who I'd met in Australia, was the musical director. And it was between me and another soprano again. And then suddenly I'm over at Andrew Collis's place, who was really, he and his wife Sharon were just amazing for me when I was in Cologne. And Andrew says, oh, by the way, and I won't mention names, but this Australian soprano who had a contract in Wiesbaden now can't do it because she's pregnant and wants to come back to Australia and have her baby. Why don't you ring Wiesbaden? They'll be looking for a lyric soprano. And I'm like, oh my God. So I call up and next day I'm in the car with a couple of other colleagues. We're driving to Wiesbaden. I get there, I sing. Now, this is where Hans Henkel comes in. Hans is absolutely opera mad. He's an amazing philanthropist. We all know his contribution to opera in Australia.
Absolutely.
Amazing. And I had met Hans the night that I had won the German Operatic Award. And we'd got on like a house on fire, and he got it in his mind that he wanted to create a new competition coming out of Melbourne, because that was his Australian Heimat, Wiesbaden. His home where he was born is my Deutsche Heimat. And he said, I'm going to create another competition. So he'd actually been in contact with Wiesbaden and spoken to the management there and said, would you be interested in creating a new competition out of Melbourne? But this is all coincidence, right? That this opportunity arrived for me to go to Wiesbaden and sing. They were really happy with my audition. They said, we want to find the intendant. He's somewhere in the house. Do you mind singing your arias again for him? So I sang my 2 arias again in the audition. And then they said, we think you're fabulous. We want you to join the ensemble.
I love that.
Wow.
And then they hooked up with Hans and said, let's go ahead with that competition. So I therefore became the first recipient of the German Australian Opera Grant.
Wow, cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, that's a great story. I had no idea.
I love when that works, we all have, we go through so much as singers and so many ups and downs. And then when something just works and you're in the right place, the right time, that's just like life going, here you go. You've been working so hard. This is your opportunity here. And I just think that that's so wonderful. And, we spend so much time standing when we're younger in front of audition panels and not begging per se, but being like, oh, this is what I do. This is what like little puppy dogs. And then occasionally you actually go, you get somewhere where they go, I really like, they're really honest and they say, I really like you. We really like what you do. There's no bullshit. It's just, we really, we appreciate you. We see you, and here's this opportunity and those kind of moments in our career are so life defining. I find I got invited to do similarly. I was in the finals of the Wagner competition in Seattle Opera. And I was, the only kind of non-American in the final, and I, and it was so exciting. But Wagner, it wasn't super my thing, but I'd won this Bayreuth Prize and everything, and I was still finding myself. And as a result of that, the casting director at the Met was in the finals, and I didn't win anything. I mean, I sang fine, but I was just delighted to be there. But she heard me, and she got in touch with my manager, and she said, I'd like Helena to come and do a Met audition, but I don't want her to bring the German repertoire. I'd like her to bring Italian repertoire because that's what I hear in her. And, she'd been casting director at the Met for 30-something years.
Amazing.
And so this is how I got my start at the Met, like literally by this one woman sitting in the audience. Would you like to come over? And I was like, okay. And I went over there and I thought I was I remember going in there, and every audition that I'd done in the lead up to that point was all this, like, people don't talk to you, you don't look at, like all this kind of stuff. Whereas Helena Dix would go into an audition and be like, hi, how's it going? And quite often I'd get really interesting, variable feedback on the fact that I was so in their faces, as some of them would describe it, or friendly, or everyone else would kind of, and I'd be really confident. I'd walk in, I'd shake their hands. I'd want to be human about it. I didn't want to be treated like another person, like another sheep. Like, I wanted to be memorable.
Exactly. That's exactly what I coach.
And I remember someone saying to me early in my career, I won't say who said it, but someone said to me, oh, you can't do that, Helena, in an audition. You have to be, whatever your voice is, you have to be that package. And I said, whoa, hang on a second. So if I'm singing like Queen-like repertoire, I have to walk in like a queen. I walk in with my tiara on and my finger up my arm. The thing is, those opera companies are going to have to work with me, and I want them to remember me. So I want to be me, because at the end of the day, yes, my product is important, that I'm doing my job well, but also I'm me. Like, that's, my voice is mine. Like, this is my branding. And I remember walking into that audition just being like, okay, Helena, I feel like I'm going to throw up because I'm singing at the Metropolitan Opera. But you know what? Who cares? This is it. This is me. I've come a long way. I'm just going to go in there and it's going to have a good time. And I walked in. There's just this one woman in the whole hall, and she said, oh, hi, Helena, welcome. What are you going to sing for us today? And I said, I'm going to sing Cristina Regina di Svezia, this rare bel canto, because you requested some Italian. Oh, yeah, good. And so I sang and I finished. And it was the first time, I think, ever that someone's just looked at me. She just cocked her head to one side. She's like, I really like you.
That's lovely.
And I said, oh, so does my mum. So now you, there's two of you. And she kind of roared with laughter. And then we had this chat, and she said, what else have you got? And I told her, and she chose for me to sing Ernani, which was the closest thing that she could have chosen in style to what I'd just done. And when you're a singer and you go in with like 5 arias or whatever.
Yeah, all different types and
you're like,
shapes,
oh, what
and
are they going to
sizes.
choose? What's like, you try and like have a whole psychological analysis of what you're going to do next. And of course, I'm like, I was not expecting that. I thought she'd, choose something completely different, some Mozart or something. She said, yeah, let's do Ernani. And I was like, okay. And so then I sang it. I got to the end. She went, what are you doing tomorrow? And I said, I'm sorry. And she said, I'd like you to come back tomorrow and sing like what you're saying, like when you did this audition and they went to find the intendant.
Yes.
She said, I'd like to find get the head of music and for you to do a session with him, because she said, I think we could make something work, but I'd like to get his opinion.
Great.
And I said, okay, great. I said, is there anything in particular that I can have a think about in the meantime before tomorrow? She was so blunt. She's like, well, sopranos, they come on the stage and they're great at the top and you're great at the bottom, but the middle is always a bit meh. So I'm going to send you to the coach, to a head of music, and he's going to tell me if your middle's good or bad. And I went, great. So, and she said, what do you, and then she asked me again, she said, so what are you doing tomorrow? I said I was going to go shopping, but since you've asked so nicely, I'll come back. And we had a bit of a laugh, and I met the head of music the next day, and we got along like a house on fire. And he said, Miss Dix, do you know why you're here? And I said, yeah, because your casting director thinks the middle of my voice is shit and wants you to check if it is or not. And he literally looked at me, and he cocked his head back and ripped this big laugh, and he went, I think you and I are going to be friends for a long time. And and we kind of are. And we got to the end of the session, and we had this really funny session. And at the end, he went, so we need a cover for Hernani. We've just lost our cover for Elvira.
Oh.
And you happened to walk along, and in your repertoire choice was Hernani, and you're here at the right time. And that started my whole relationship there. So
yeah, it's all those synchronicities.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
You couldn't have planned anything that happened with you in that, and then my experience here in Wiesbaden.
Yeah, I love that.
But I think a big part of it as well is being ready for those moments. It's about the mental preparation. It's about the physical, the vocal preparation that you do to be ready to take those opportunities when they happen, because 1,000 other sopranos could have walked into that scenario for both of you, and they wouldn't have been able to make the most of those opportunities that were presented to them. So it's so much about that preparation that you have to do behind the scenes, I think.
Absolutely. And, that brings me all the way to absolutely that mindset. You have to actually believe it's possible, and you have to have that goal. You have to know. Well, I mean, my goal at the time was I just want to stay here. I want to stay in Germany. I really want to give this a good go. I feel great here. I feel supported. This is where I can see myself singing as a soloist.
What then has inspired you to become a mindset coach? Because it's such an interesting journey to be the singer, have these tools yourself, and then train and choose to share them with other people.
So, like many, many singers, things went a little pear-shaped at the start of the pandemic. So I had been working from 2014 as a freelance singer, not something that I actively chose. I would have much preferred to have continued to be fest, because I really loved that lifestyle. I loved that certainty of knowing every month that I had the income to support me and my family, but I was also the variety of every day rehearsing a different opera and singing between 7 and 9 roles a year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I actually really, really loved that. It suited me with 2 children, having two children. So I had set up in 2020, I mean, the irony of it, I had set up for the first time. So it's taken me 6 years to really get this amazing year ahead of me with 8 operas back to back. All of the performance dates worked. Everything was perfect.
Oh.
And then, of course, we all know what happened. So all of that work disappeared, which sent me into a bit of a tailspin, because I was suddenly left without any income and any way to support me and my kids. I mean, I had savings. I'd been smart enough to have savings, but there was still that, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And believe it or not, the first month, all I did was sew masks, because suddenly we had 2 weeks here in Germany where they said wearing a mask outside is mandatory. So get yourselves a mask. And of course, China couldn't create them quick enough, and there weren't any here. So I started sewing them.
Right.
Guys, I was so supported by my community here. People were just buying my masks for 20 euros a pop because they knew I needed the money. And I had even one colleague who was still fest, so he was just at home having a ball, but he was still getting his monthly wage. So he called me and said, I want to buy 200 euros worth of masks, and I'm going to give them to all my friends, just so I can support you. So that was really lovely. And then what I had already started in 2018 was a course on how to be a life coach. And that had sort of happened because I've always been someone who's been very generous and helped, and I like to see people succeed, and I like to leave people with a feeling of increase. And 2 friends in the space of 1 week both said to me, you're looking for something else to do because you can see that long term as a single mother, being a freelance singer is not particularly going to work for you at this time. Why don't you become a life coach? And I'm like, oh, what? So I had to do all this study, and is it a real thing, and what do life coaches do? And I started studying it, and I thought, oh my God, this is made for me. I could really do something with this, and I can serve on a different level. Because, as singers, we're serving.
Yeah.
We get out there and we perform and we serve the music, the composer, but the audience, we take every single individual soul in our audience on a different journey. And we serve, whether it's a distraction or it's reaching their emotional needs, whatever it is we're serving. But I found that coaching was a different type of serving. It was literally being able to show people their magnificence and help them get out of their own way.
Yeah.
And start being successful, feeling better about themselves, stop self-sabotaging. And then I thought, wow, I've got all this amazing life experience as a singer. It makes sense to work with singers. I've got all these new understandings with neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis and how to coach. And I could use that coupled with my experience to help other young singers get out of their own way and start experiencing real success. So, yeah, I didn't fall into it by any means, but then when the pandemic happened and then after sewing masks, I realised that the school I was doing it at, the Life Coaching College in Melbourne, went completely online and I could accelerate and finish my course. And I did that. I started my business in June 2020, so it's been going 5 years now. And I can proudly say I've helped a lot of people make massive transformations and make shifts that perhaps they would have got to eventually, but I've helped them accelerate it. So it's been really fulfilling.
So what are the most common challenges that you see artists and other people that you work with when it comes to their mindset?
There is a tendency to care far too much about what other people say and think, which is what we're getting ourselves up in front of people every day and exposing ourselves to different opinions.
There's a vulnerability about being a singer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But people take it far too seriously. In fact, I gave a singing lesson before I came on this call, and my student was talking about what someone had said to them. And I said, look, I know how that feels. I know that we can be hurt by that. I said, but I want you to go back to what you were thinking about yourself and your singing before the person said that to you.
Oh, wow.
And we talked about it. I was feeling confident. I was feeling happy. I was feeling like invincible. And I said, and you let something from outside of you that took maybe 2 or 3 seconds in time to actually happen, and you have replayed it over and over and over in your mind, and you are allowing that to stop you from moving forward. I said, let's take radical responsibility and say, I am choosing not to believe that person or not to allow their belief to become woven into the tapestry of my belief of who I am. And I'm going to go back to what I was thinking before they said that thoughtless, mean comment. And so if you can give people that perspective, they go, oh, yeah, actually, I was feeling good about it. And now I'm going to release myself from believing that person was right or that what they said was true even. Here's the thing too. Everything that comes from anybody else's mouth is coming through their map of the world, how they think things should be, their personal preferences, all of this sort of thing. And so I find that a lot of it is undoing the harmful or mean things that other people have said that we've chosen to take on as our truth. And then it's it's thinking. It's thinking is the start of everything. And one of the first things I say to somebody if I start working with them, and I'll get you two to do it as well, I want you to look around the room you're in and just take in everything. And then I want you to understand that every single thing around you, including the shape of the room, the color of the paint, what you're wearing, your glasses, all of it was first a thought in somebody's mind. Everything must start with thought energy, including how we design our lives, how we want things to be. And my favorite quote of all time is, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So what I love to do with people is start expanding what they think is possible. So it's challenging beliefs. It's getting them to think bigger. It's getting them to often understand where that thought came from, and it invariably comes from somebody else. And for them to start being courageous and choosing, if I had the career that I want, what sort of beliefs would I need to have about myself in order to get that? So I really start with thinking, beliefs, and looking at a singer's. I'm not someone we don't dwell on the past, because what you focus on expands. We don't want to remember too much trauma. That's for the therapist. As a coach, I'm getting people to start looking forward. Where are you now? What do you want? And what's currently stopping you from getting there? And that's the kernel. That's what we work on. Beliefs, thinking, limiting ideas, all of that sort of thing. And when people can start shifting and making changes, which is always uncomfortable, from the outset, I say you are making massive changes, and all change happens at an unconscious level. This is going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to come up against a wall that says, oh, it doesn't feel right. I'm scared, or I'm this, or I'm that. And I say, I want you to expect it. I want you to understand that this is part and parcel of any sort of change. And I want you to embrace it. And when you feel uncomfortable, instead of jumping back and stopping what you're doing and not moving forward, I want you to celebrate. Oh my God, I feel uncomfortable. This is great. Some change is about to happen. I'm about to make a breakthrough. And so if you can pre-frame everything with that, people feel more comfortable about making the changes that are necessary for them to see the success that they want to see.
I was just thinking when you were talking about accepting that you will fail, or accepting that it will be hard, or accepting those kinds of things. When I work with young singers in masterclasses, or singers that come to see me, and they'll go, "Oh, that was shit," and I'm like, "Great." And they kind of look at me as if to say, "What?" And I'm like, "It's great that was shit, because at the end of the day, that's how we make it better. Like if you were just good all the time, that'd be boring, wouldn't it?" It's exciting, and I love it. I love it when I sing badly. Well, obviously not in performances, but you know, when I'm rehearsing something, and I'm like, "That's really tricky," and I'm like, "Oh no, but now that's cool that it's tricky. Now I really want to make a way to make it work." But I think I think I'm at an advantage because I have that kind of personality, and so I think that's where someone like yourself, Sharon, comes in and is just so valuable to our community and to people. I've watched your career in the last years and your journey as a life coach and everything, and I feel the way that what you're saying is paired up with our craft seems to just go hand in hand, and I just think that the world is a better place for people like yourself. And I know there's not many of people like you around when it comes to our industry, people like yourself who've come up through the ranks as a singer and who are then able to take these extra qualifications and turn it around into something that's so heavily needed. And I really do think, I do think performers would be lying if they said that what we do isn't vulnerable and isn't, tricky and isn't a mountain to climb. And so what a wonderful accessory having someone like yourself who's all these kind of life experience, singer experience, and now studying this and putting it all together is just, it's a really cool thing. I think it's really fantastic.
Thank you. That's very kind.
What's interesting to me as well is that you don't just apply these skills for singers. You do work outside the performance industry as well, don't you?
Absolutely. I've worked with professors and doctors. I had a young doctor who came to me and wanted to be wanted to go into a specialization, and there was a grueling interview that had to happen, and he had failed it 3 times, and he came to me and said, "I think I really need some help." And so we looked at his self-image, what he thought of himself, and things that he could actively and consciously change that were going to give him an advantage when the next time he walked into that interview. And he did all the work, he committed to the process, and that 4th time he went for that interview, he got it. And I can give you so many wonderful examples of singers who come to me with the I can't do this or this belief, and we've turned things around, and they're now singing. Recently, I worked with a mezzo who was really dedicated to moving herself to the next level. And I did a post about this last week where she literally was swimming in beliefs that were holding her back. And I had to teach her, you have to be your own best friend in this business.
Yeah.
You have to be your greatest ally. You have to be the voice in your ear going, you can do this. You've got what it takes. And when she started doing that, and this was very uncomfortable for her, she was doing small roles and covers at a sort of semi-professional company in Chicago. And then she decided, she said, I want to sing the big roles. And I said, well, then you have to tell the universe that. You have to give up doing these small piddly things, and then you have to go for the big stuff. So she wrote them a letter and said she won't be performing the smaller stuff anymore and only be considered for larger things. And she literally was texting me every day going, I'm really frightened. I'm really frightened. I'm going, stay with it. You've done the right thing. You've just done something different. You're expected to feel frightened. Okay?
Yeah.
Just, I believe in you believe in you, and together this is going to happen. Literally 2 weeks later, her agent calls her and says, this company in Colombia has heard a recording of yours or something, and they want you to come and sing Amneris in Aida.
Wow.
And she was just bursting out of her skin. And I said, look, I know it sounds a bit like rainbow hearts and unicorn farts, but you literally told the universe, I'm ready for the next level. You left a void and it was filled with what you wanted. But I said, you attracted that. You made the decision, no, I am worth it and I am going to step up to the next level. And this is the thing, you have to stop the bullshit lies and the ants, as I've heard somebody call them, automatic negative thoughts. And you have to weed them out and you have to start saying, no, this is what I want. I'm capable. I'm able. I'm willing. I'm going to do it.
Okay. Can I play devil's advocate for a minute?
Please do.
Because I'm curious. So what about if someone had an improvement in their mindset? So they had the confidence and they presented well and they believed it. They asked the universe and they were thinking all these things that you're thinking. But what about if the talent or the ability, I should say, not the talent, because that's a stupid word to use, really. The ability didn't match the confidence.
That's a really great question. So first of all, anytime a singer comes to me, I do a little bit of research on them. I'll be very honest. And I look at videos and I watch things, and there's never anybody who's come to me who's just is crap, who can't sing in tune, who doesn't have potential. People, I think, get to this level and they go, I know I want to take that step further, but I don't have the tools and strategies or even the understanding of how I do it. So that's the first thing. But here's another thing, and I do this, you'll appreciate this, as a singing teacher. I have students who, you can see their faces. They're about to take the phrase up to the top, into the top part of their vocal apparatus, and you can see their faces already going, sorry, for those who are only listening, I'm making this awful grimace on my face. And I literally stop playing at the piano and I say, excuse me, can you just share with me what you were just thinking? And they're like, oh, I hate this phrase.
Yeah.
It's where I always crack. And then I put on my coaching hat and I say, do you know that your thinking creates a self-fulfilling prophecy? Did you know that your 70 trillion cells are listening to every thought you're having? So if you're saying this phrase is going to be shit and my top note is going to be crap, all your cells are down there going, okay, guys, did you hear her? She wants this to be shit. No, I mean, I'm making fun here, but that's literally what's happening. So I get them to say, okay, I want you to stop. I want you to take a couple of deep breaths. And I want you to now imagine that note being free, gloriously resonating, all the things that you want it to be. So we start talking about what we want. And they go, okay, I've got it. All right. I said, now I want you to close your eyes and imagine. Just relax and imagine that's how that phrase is happening. Got it? Right. Okay, now let's sing it. They sing through the phrase, and lo and behold, it sounds completely different. And that's not a coincidence. So often, and this is where the trick is, often those thoughts that made the face go grimace are unconscious. We're not consciously actually thinking, this is crap, I can't do this. That's what's playing on in the background. And that's where all of our actions come from. 98% of what we do is unconscious. So that's why I actually get them to say out loud, what were you just thinking?
Uh-huh.
So even from a technical singing point of view, I get people to stop self-sabotaging and going, oh, I can't sing top notes. And I say, well, when did you decide that? And let's change that belief so that next time you want to take the phrase up into those upper echelons, you can do it easily and freely and with joy. So I don't know if that's answered your question.
It's a tricky question though, right? Because I have taught people who are full of confidence but do not have the ability to back it at all. Because at the end of the day, we all sing for different reasons, right? Obviously, the three of us are talking very professionally because that's what the three of us do.
Yes.
But, I've taught kids or teenagers, for instance, who think that they're going to be the next Beyonce, and they're really not. Like, they're like, even if they worked really hard, it ain't going to happen. And I know these things can get better, right? So I appreciate that these things can get better, but I still think that people have to be realistic about where they fit in. And so I'm a very positive person, so I'm not trying to be negative about it or about what you're saying, but I am also saying that it must be tricky sometimes because you as you said, you're definitely getting people who are at a certain ability, which is probably the difference, and you're able to unlock something and they're able to go off and do that. But I also think that people need to be realistic about the entirety of the package. So the mindset towards it, how they present. What do you like away from home? Can you travel? You can't find out a lot of those things until you've done it for yourself either, can you?
No, that's true.
So in all your time that you've been doing this, Sharon, have you, obviously I don't want you to name people or necessarily be specific.
No, I would never do that.
No, of course you wouldn't. But has there have you come up against something that has really challenged you to try to break through?
Absolutely. There's been a couple of clients who they've come with the hope, but they haven't quite understood the level of responsibility it takes to make the changes and to actually see through my thinking and what I'm doing and living into the past and thinking all about the past and the past traumas, I'm recreating that in my future. There was not that type of responsibility. They couldn't quite see it and felt very defensive, and so they just weren't ready. They wanted it. And see, this is the thing too. As a coach, I believe 150% that I believe in my clients. And that's also an energetic thing. How could I possibly expect them to succeed if I don't believe they can?
Yeah.
Of course.
And so I had the belief in these people. So therefore, of course. And that was just a personal thing for me, getting very frustrated, like, okay, and then offering this tool and that tool. Or I would say, they would come to the session and there'd be tears and I'd say, okay, have you watched the previous video and have you done the worksheets? No. Like, okay, please, I guarantee this is going to help you. So it's like bringing a horse to water, isn't it? You can't make them drink. They want it, but they're not actually understanding the level of responsibility and that they need to do something. But then that's reflected in their careers. We're go-getters, right? We know what we want and we go after it. And a lot of people think it has to come to them or that they play the victim. Oh, there's not enough opportunities here in Australia, or there's not this here, or there's not that there. And warranted to a certain extent, it's true. But at the same time, we also have to create them. We have to create our own concerts. We have to contact people. We have to, I remember meeting a young German baritone here, and we were both in the same show together. And he was saying, oh, so you're a coach. So what do you do? And I gave him a few ideas. And when I said, there's a whole module in my course about how you become a solo entrepreneur and how you start creating opportunities for yourself. And, I didn't want to give away too much, but I just said, it's time for you to start writing to theatres. And he's like, cold calling theatres? He said, don't you get jobs through networking with people? I said, that's one way. I said, but how are those 80 theatres across Germany going to know you exist if you don't tell them?
Yeah.
And that was so uncomfortable for him. He was like, oh, so what do I do? I said, join my course. And I will tell you all the juicy details and we will get you going in the direction of your career.
Well, it's so good for people to be able to at least have that opportunity to find it and have their minds opened, even if a little bit, to that type of world. So much of what you've been saying reminds me of the change management style, the ADKAR, the awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. That's change management within business. And everything you're saying is that at its core. And it makes me feel a little bit better because it's the form of change management that I tend to subscribe to. But it's so interesting to see that being applied on personal and career levels for people. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it really is a pleasure. And I feel like I genuinely get so excited when people have a breakthrough or they start moving towards what it is that they've always wanted, but have previously stopped themselves from getting there. And a very quick story, I worked with an Australian soprano, and she had come to me and literally said, I keep auditioning, and she couldn't see, even though it was right in front of her, she couldn't see what was stopping her from getting any success and getting more gigs and being chosen over other people for different opportunities. And we got down to her thinking, and I said, okay, I want you to imagine you're outside the door of the audition room, and I want you to tell me habitually what you normally are saying to yourself as you're about to walk in. And her body language told me everything. She just sort of put her hand in her face and she went, oh, Sharon. I said, come on. I said, this is a safe space. You can tell me. She said, I'm saying things like, I'm crap. I'm wasting the auditioner's time. There's so many better sopranos around than me. Oh my God, I'm sure I'm going to forget the words. And oh my God, do I feel my throat tightening up? So you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then I said to her, okay, I said, I want you to do something for me. I want you to imagine someone who you really, really love, someone who you would do anything for, someone who's very close to you. And she said, okay, I've got them. I said, so I want them to imagine them. They're standing next to you and it's them going in for the audition. And now I would love you to say those things that you've been saying to yourself. I want you to say them to them. And she looked at me horrified and her eyes filled up with tears. And she said, I can't do that. And I said, why can't you? She said, because. And then the penny dropped. She said, they wouldn't be able to sing. They'll be frightened. They'll be sad. They'll be hurt. And I said, exactly. But it's okay for you to say those things to yourself. I said, can you see what's happening here? And she was like, oh my God. And this was in our strategy call. She goes, I think I need to do your course. And she did, and she graduated, and she's been going great guns since then because she realized she was self-sabotaging on the highest level. She was literally shooting herself in the foot before she even got into the audition room. And so many singers do it and they're not even aware they're doing it. And they think it's okay. And it's also because for many countries and many cultures, it's okay to readily put yourself down.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're used to hearing. And that makes you feel an affinity with someone. The great Australian, you ask somebody, how are you? Yeah, not bad. For God's sake, it's a double negative. And because the brain cannot process no, not never, what you're literally saying is, yeah, I'm bad. And is that how you want to feel? No. But we say it because it's out of habit and we don't understand the impact of what our words have on us as individuals. To our mindset, to the actions, to the risks we take, to the dreams we no longer even look at because we think, oh, I don't want to think about it because I'll be disappointed when it doesn't happen. Oh my God, that's classic self-sabotage.
Do you think if someone asks how I am and every time someone asks how I am, I reply, I'm bloody awesome, do you think they're going to think I'm a or
that's where you go, I don't give a what you think of me. I mean, literally, you can because, okay, I have days. We all have days, right? But I don't stay in that position very long anymore. I used to get into a funk and stay in it for weeks. But now I know I give myself 3 minutes to deal with it, to get angry, to cry, to scream, to whatever. And then I go, okay, that's over. Would I rather feel? And how am I going to get to where I want to go? By looking at what is and what's not working is not the solution because the solution is never where the problem is. So it's about looking at, okay, that's how it is. It's shitty, it's sad, it's tragic even, or it's devastating. I'm going to feel it because you've got to feel it to heal it. But how would I like things to be? And when you change your focus from what is to what you want, that's when the transformation can start happening. Because you start entertaining what's possible and you become what you think about. So even though, I'll say to people, I want you to believe this. And they go, I want you to say this. And they go, but it's a lie. I don't believe it. I say, of course it's a lie and you don't believe it. Because at the moment you don't have physical proof of it. But I said, just trust me and think of it as an experiment. Play a game with me and say these affirmations and think this way and commit to this for at least 3 weeks. And then we'll have this discussion about you believing it. I said, because a belief is just a thought you've thought over and over. Thinking positively and positive psychology takes some time to understand, but the benefits are huge. Changing your mindset and being able to understand, I don't care if this person thinks I'm a because that's up to them.
I don't actually. So
No. Oh, no. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that one of the most important things is to remember is that we are all so divinely unique. The chances of us all being here is 1 in 400 trillion. In fact, there's some guy who's worked it out. It's almost zero, the chances of us being here, about your parents meeting each other and then them copulating at a certain time for that sperm and that egg to create who you are. Right? And then all of your experiences. And this is what I encourage all of my performers or anybody I work with in a coaching situation is to lean into all of their strengths and who they really are, because nobody else can do it. And that's our competitive advantage. You know, when I pass this human form and eventually leave this experience, there's never going to be another Sharon. There never has been and there never will be. And the same goes for you too.
Oh, it's very good for the world that there'll never be another Helena. I'm just putting it out there.
I'm sure there's lots of people who would disagree with you. Right?
Too much. One of me is more than enough, I'm sure.
With all of that and that fantastic advice, we might wrap this up, but we like to finish all of our chats with fantastic guests with 5 rapid questions. So, Sharon, are you up for our 5 rapid fire questions today?
Oh, my goodness. Yes, I am. Go for it.
Wonderful. Sharon Kempton, can you juggle?
No, not yet.
That's the positive mindset that we were looking for.
Yeah. I love it. Have you ever busked?
I have.
Was it good?
It was fabulous. It was glorious, and I earned lots of money. Excellent.
If you weren't a performer and a coach, what job would you love to do?
I would love to be an interior designer or a fashion designer.
Ooh, fantastic. Have you ever had a chance to do that?
No, but I really love letting the world know about my colourful personality and my positivity by what I wear. I always wear colour. And I love matchy, like matching bag with matching shoes, or the necklace matches with the shoe or something like that. So yeah.
I love that.
Oh,
lots
great.
of colour. Does reflect nicely. If you could perform a duet with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. I would love to do a duet with him. Yeah. In fact, I would love to. There's this gorgeous duet. It's a Purcell duet. It's called Lost Is My Quiet. And it is so divine, but I would really love to sing it with him.
Nice.
That's great. If you had to enter every room for the rest of your life with a personal theme song, what would it be?
I'm going to be honest, and I trust this. I Will Survive just popped into my head.
There you go. That's great.
It's fitting.
Well, that's infinitely positive. We love that.
It is, because I figure that I have, and this is something also that I have learned to foster in my personality, is that there will never be a situation where I will not find a solution.
Yeah.
That I can overcome everything and anything that comes my way, and that things are always working out for me.
Well, then you're going to love this final question. Sharon, have you ever eaten pizza with a knife and fork?
I have.
And do you do it regularly?
No.
There we go.
I don't do it regularly.
Yeah, see, I think this wording of have you ever, there have been situations where people may have had to eat pizza with a knife and fork.
I know.
But you're making it so narrow.
But
so
that's
I'm
why
not counting it.
You can just back off. You can back off. The reason that I then say do you often is to give you, Adam, the possible points on that one. Did you enjoy it when you did eat pizza with the knife and fork?
I did. You know, I wasn't actually considering the action. I was just enjoying the delicious, mouth-watering pizza.
Yeah, we'll have to take a bit of a tie on that one, Adam, I think, you know.
Okay, I'll pay the tie. And on that very positive note, we're going to say, Sharon Kempton, thank you so much for coming on the episode. This has been lovely and really thought-provoking, and we've really appreciated your time on this. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been an absolute delight to speak with you both and see you both today.
Yes. No, it's been lovely. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Sharon.
You're welcome. Bye.